Welcome to the Marysville School District Instructional Technology Training Ignite Participation. My name is Melissa Dilly, and I'll be your guide today as we see how to inspire our students to participate more in class. First off, let's look at our learning targets. By the end of today, you should know how to use collaborative boards to increase student voice, learn how to develop boards with questioning strategies, learn how to create and share board spaces with students, and learn which collaborative boards work best for student age groups or topics. But before we start today, I think it's important to think about ourselves as learners. So maybe ourselves in a staff meeting or in a meeting with our peers as educators or support staff. And when you attend a training or a meeting, how is your voice heard when questions are asked of the group? So, how does the leader or the person in charge collect every single person's thought? Is it a raise of hands? Is it sticky notes? Like, how is that usually done so your voice is heard? Go ahead and take a moment, share your thoughts in the chat box, the dialogue box, submit it, and then we'll use that as a springboard for our discussion. So, for many of us, when we attend a meeting or a training, some of you may have said things like the person who raises the hand, the person who speaks the most. Oftentimes, we as adults have things to say, and sometimes we choose not to in a meeting, but sometimes our ideas are just not gathered from us. So, let's keep our mindset as if we are students, and let's go ahead and experience some tools like a student, and maybe we can apply these to our own learning in our own meetings, but think about how maybe these might benefit your students. So as we work today, let's consider what part of this learning experience would work for your group of students, so your age group and their abilities, and what obstacles might they face while implementing this. And I'm going to ask that you share out at the end after we do this interactive experience. Even though we are self-paced, it's really important that if you are asked to kind of join in or add your discussion to a board, a collaborative board in some way, please do that. So, we're going to take a look at some learning, and we're going to all have the same learning. So, whether we teach general education classes, math, science, PE, let's put all that aside for just a moment and let's pretend we're all learners of something new. In this case, a mountain of mud. So, today we're going to explore mud volcanoes like a student. Let's watch this video to see if we can learn a little more.
This is a mud volcano. And I spent 4 hours dragging my production team around the desert looking for mud volcanoes that were right off the side of the road. For a little context, we had driven out to the Salton Sea, which, if you haven't heard of it, is this really weird man-made pseudo-accident of a lake that used to be a huge attraction for the Hollywood star types.
I've never been there, and so I see this huge sea. I'm like, wow, that is pretty impressive. And then, you put your window down and you smell it. You're like, I don't actually need to go up to it or do anything near it.
That's Carolina Zamora, the geologist who you might remember from my last video on the strange mud puddle moving across the desert. We were in the area to film that video because how could you not? What a bizarre thing. But I soon found out about these really cool mud volcanoes, which are holes in the ground that let up CO2 that then drags water through dusty sediment and forms these bubbling muddy holes in the ground. And then if they don't move, they slowly build up mounds like a volcano, which sounded awesome.
Okay, so that's just a little background about a mud volcano. But here's a question for you to ponder. Is a mud volcano a real volcano? Why or why not? And this is a question, these kind of open-ended questions are things you could pose to your own students to just to get their thinking. There doesn't have to be a right answer. We don't need the background knowledge. So we're going to be using something called Jamboard today. If you've not used that with your students before, it's a Google product that is interactive. So the link on my screen you will also have in the dialog box that appears. And once that dialog box appears, you're going to click on that link. This is what is going to appear. So if you've never been to Jamboard before, I have the ability to add all kinds of things. I can add text, I can add sticky notes, which is what you see here. I can add pictures, I can even draw and add things like lines. So you're my student at the moment, so let's not worry too much about how we created this Jamboard, but you are going to grab a sticky note here. Notice my directions. It says create a sticky note with your answer and reasoning. Place it on the side you choose. So we're kind of on voting, and then resize it to make it fit. So in order to add a sticky note, it's right below this select arrow. I simply click it. I can choose any color I like. And then I'm going to say, why or why not I believe it's a real volcano. So I might say something like, not real, doesn't have lava. Notice I didn't ask you to add your name. Sometimes anonymous can make students want to participate more. So sticky notes can be picked up and moved using the select arrow, and they can be resized here. So if you arrive and there's already sticky notes here, you'll just need to move yours to the correct screen. So take just a moment, go ahead and add your sticky note to the screen. You might want to just push pause for a moment. And then once you've done that, go ahead and restart the video, and then we'll continue on our discussion about Jamboard. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to add your sticky note here to the screen. You may have even hopefully had a chance to play with some of these buttons. You could have absolutely done that as well. But one nice thing about Jamboard is, as a teacher, I have the ability to set something up here using this J. So I can go to Jamboard itself. I can just Google Jamboard. Again, it's a Google product. And you notice these are some other jams that I have done for students. I make a new jam by just pushing the plus button. It's that easy. Then I'm given a blank piece of paper. Think about it like a piece of paper. And then I can add backgrounds, which is what you saw that I had done before. I can add sticky notes if I want to add some directions for my students. I do have a basic pen tool, and I also have text box and shapes. So go ahead and take a moment and see if you can't play around with Jamboard on your screen. If you're in My Jam, you'll just click the J in the top corner like I showed you, and then the plus button, and see if you can't add a few items on here. The nice thing is that when we use a Jamboard with students, just like I did for you, I can just get a share link. I just have to make sure that I'm using that button and turning it on to everyone with the link can participate. If you just want students to look at something, you'll do it as a viewer. And if you want them to be an editor like you were, you'll need to make sure to change that before you share it. So take just a moment now that you've added one to mine, go ahead and play with Jamboard and see if you can't create your own if you've not done that before. And then join us back here for some new learning about other ways we could use Jamboard with students. I'm hopeful that you had a moment to create your own jam and see how easy that is for you to make and share with students. But now I'd like to show you a couple other ideas about what you could do. So let me get back to our original screen here. So one idea is to have some sort of question that you pose to students. Doesn't need a right or wrong answer. This just kind of spurns our thinking before we learn something. But up here at the top, you notice I have page 1 of 3. So you can add more pages to your jam. And sometimes I do these ahead of time with students. So for example, if I had younger students and I wanted to do some sort of sorting activity where we're maybe classifying which one of these might be mud volcanoes and which one might not, this is a great way to just start a conversation based on pictures without having to cut them out, put them on tables, or sort, because students would have access to the pictures here simply by sharing the jam and telling them to move to the next page. Now, maybe with our upper elementary or older students, I could also have a reading assignment. So this is, I took right out of Wikipedia, so I just copy and pasted it. So now all students have something they can read to learn more information. So think about Jamboard not only as a collaborative space, but a place that we can start discussions, a place for resources, and maybe even a place for an assignment that we could put right in here and have students work together on. So just know that Jamboard is a great way to do that. But let's continue our conversation about mud volcanoes and learn a little more, and then we can see another tool that you might find useful. Okay, so this is the same video. We're going to learn about a little more science behind the mud volcanoes. So what I'd like you to do is focus how land elevation can change over time to form something called a graben. And a graben is a vocabulary term we're going to focus on. Remember, we're pretending we're students in our own classrooms learning something new. So graben, let's see if you see that word, hear that word, and then see if your brain can latch onto some facts about land elevation and how that affects these mud volcanoes.
how it went down. As a person living in the year 2021, I pulled up a map on my phone of the route to get to the mud volcanoes, but the main road to them was gated off. We talked to the person who managed that area, who told us that the original closed gated road was correct. So we drove back, parked outside, and decided to try to hike the 2 miles down the road, and we soon realized why it was closed. See, there's something unique about this area that can create mud pots. Check this out. There's a really cool site called topographicmap.com where you can click around and see the elevation. For example, there's an impressive 2,000 feet of difference from just here to here. And then you click here and it goes negative. And that's not an error. That's a basin, the Salton Trough, which is over 200 feet below sea level. How does something in the middle of a continent get below sea level? So over the last 5 million years, the Pacific and North American tectonic plates, have actually been sliding past one another so that Los Angeles is moving towards San Francisco. And this is still happening at about the same rate as your nails grow, but it's not constant. It's as if your nails didn't grow for 100 years and then boom, they grow 20 feet in a day. And that's disruptive. That's when big earthquakes happen, like this one in San Francisco in 1906 that ignited a 3-day fire that destroyed 500 city blocks. The San Andreas Fault, it doesn't just shake the ground, it does something else a little unusual.
So when you have this strike slip motion, you'll start to move, the faults will move, and then you'll actually get some extension. You'll get some opening.
This extension process creates a graben, which is a word that means a sunken area of land that comes from the German word for grave. The sinking process is so violent and vast that this area should actually be thousands of feet deep into the earth. But then the Colorado River came in and brought sediment, and then the plates pulled apart, and the river came and brought sediment, plates pulled apart, and so on and so forth for so many millennia that some areas have actually been filled with up to 20,000 feet of sediment. 20,000 feet! And that's just all under your feet as you're walking around there. It's honestly kind of surprising that the area is only 200 feet below sea level.
Okay, so that was a lot of scientific facts to take in. So as students in my class, now we're going to use a new tool. So we're going to use Cami, which you may have used traditionally just to sign documents, maybe for HR. Maybe you've tried this with your students, but there's some new tools they've added to kind of help collect our thoughts when we have some real big ideas. So my task for you is to explain one part of the process of that graben being formed by inserting a comment into an image from the video. So you notice on the right here, I have some images. These were screenshots that I took right from the video itself, and I put them in a Google Doc, which I opened in Cami. So like I said, I have the link here. You're gonna also have the link in just a moment up here. And when we click into this Cami document, we are all shared editors. So I do want to put that out there that we have editing rights, all of us. Okay, now when you arrive, you'll notice there are some comments already here. These are other students who have come to our class. I'm going to go ahead and turn some of those comments off by just clicking on them to give you a little bit of room to participate. And you can do this with your students as well. So you're able to kind of turn things on and off by simply clicking on them. And that's a way to even honor students who have worked on these before. So let's go ahead and get all these turned off, or at least a few of them. All right. Okay. So now we just noticed we have a couple samples here for you to look at. So how do I add a comment, and how would I have a student add a comment? Well, there's 3 ways you can add a comment. The first one is you just choose the comment feature, click on this thing that says text comment, and then click on the picture or image that you want your comment attached to. So if you have something to say about the earthquake, you'd simply click on the earthquake. Of course, I can choose my color if I like, and then I can make my comment about how that relates to forming a graben, or what is a result of a graben, or a fact I remember. And I can hit the delete tool to get that to go away. Now, if I'd like to leave a voice comment, because maybe typing is hard for me, I can absolutely click on the microphone, and maybe I want to say something about these sliding plates. Again, I click here, hello, 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 hello. Let me tell you a little bit about movement, and then hit stop. Notice now it's a voice comment that other people could listen to my thoughts. Of course, I can hit the delete button if I'm all done with that. And finally, we have the ability to leave a video comment. So if I wanted to make a video comment about this below sea level, I'd simply click. You can see me now. It's really interesting how this is 200 feet below sea level and how that helps form mud pots. When I click done, Now I've left a video comment for my friends to gather some of my learning. So once you're in this document, your job is to leave one comment for another viewer. You can either leave a voice comment, a written comment, or a video comment, or some of each. If you'd like to go back and read some of your colleagues' comments, that's fine as well. That's kind of the point, is we're collaborating together. So do that, and then join me back here, and we'll learn a little bit more about Kami and all of its options. So if you've made it back here, hopefully you had a chance to make a comment. You'll notice the comments on mine have disappeared, and I wanted to show you how I did that in case you ever needed to clear comments that have been made prior. So as the owner of the document, I was able to hit these 3 lines here, select those 3 lines, and then I went down to delete all annotations, and only the owner can do this, but this is a way to just kind of clear a screen if you want to use it over and over again. You notice I still see all the collaborators that have been given access, but that's just saying that they have come into this and it just has their initials on there. So that's one thing you may need to do if you have multiple classes and you don't want to make multiple documents. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, how did I share this with students? Okay, so first thing is, this was not made in Kami. I made this in Google Docs. And then when I was on the main Kami screen, so I went to kamiapp.com, I selected the file from my Google Drive. Okay, so the reason I did that is because I didn't want students to be able to move the pictures or the words around. And so if I open it as from something I've already made, if we can find it real quick. If I make it off of a Google Doc, then it comes in and it's all glued together as something we call a PDF. So PDF just means it's glued together. If I had inserted these pictures, anybody could have moved them, and I don't want that with students. Okay, so that's how I did that. Now, in order to share it with them, so they were collaborators, I use this share button here. And you notice I get a unique link, and that's just like the link that you yourself click to get in here. The only thing you want to be careful about with Kami is if you are doing a group collaboration, you want to make sure anyone with the link is an editor, and that's actually the default, so that will happen automatically. If you just wanted to show them something, you would click Viewer. And if you wanted every person or every student to have their own copy, so you weren't working in the same document, but they were maybe annotating or commenting on their own, then you would click Create an Individual Copy. It actually gives it a different kind of share link. So notice it spins, and now these letters are a little different. So I could then copy this link into a Clever link. I could copy it into Google Classroom. I could copy it into Canvas. If I use Canvas, some of our middle school and high schoolers are using Canvas. So that's just one thing to think about. Now, it should be auto-saving for you, but just so you know, you do have a save minute, and if you wanted to double check that you were on the most up-to-date copy, you could. And then all those comments and annotations, if you wanted to save those for later, you do have the ability to download it as well. But everything that you make in Kami with students, if you're working on a document, Kami makes a folder for you. So I'm just going to go ahead and search for Kami, and notice I have some Kami folders here. These are created automatically from Kami when I use it, and so I can get back to any document that we've been working on as a class. So that's Kami. It's a great way to collaborate. It's a great way to put pictures, images, words, and have everyone talking at the same time. But there are other ways for us to collaborate, so let's go ahead and take a look at that now. All right, so we do need to know just a tiny bit more about how this story ends with mud pots, so we can use that as our foundation for our next activity. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is observe the explorers as they journey to find active mud pots and discover something else along the way. So there's kind of a mystery at the end here, so let's watch all the way to the end.
The thing about an area below sea level is that it can flood. Well, any flat, dry area can flood. Yeah, he agrees. So we're walking down the road on our mud pot mission to find that the road had flooded. You'd step on the ground and this black tar water would come up and cover your shoes. And my next mistake was that I was following satellite imagery on the phone, but we get to a place where we just cannot go any farther because what the satellite didn't show is that the entire area had flooded and turned into a massive wetland, and it's all marshes, and there's almost overhead high stalks of grassy stuff that were unpassable. So it's 3 hours later, and I had just about given up, and we resigned to go check out these little mud mounds right off the main road that I thought were dormant mud volcanoes. It was the end of the day, we'd given up, so we park the car and walk over, and as we get closer, I'm hearing what I think is faint bubbling. No way. We get up to them and they are going off. There's what looked like a fresh eruption from that day. There were these bubbling, bursting small burblers and big giant bubbles, and it was so cool. So after all that hiking, the bushes, they were right there, literally visible from the road. Whatever. Mud pots are so random. They're so cool. And because of the San Andreas fault line and the 5 million years of sediment forming here, it's the perfect location for the sediment to make beautifully erupting mud pots. But they don't usually move.
Dun, dun, dun. All right, so our wonderful friend there just left us with a cliffhanger that now we need more information on. So the question for you is, how could a mud pot move as mentioned in the end of this video? It's a total mystery to me. Now, in order to solve this mystery, we're going to go into our third collaborative board. We've already tried Jamboard and we've already tried Cami. Now we're going to use something called Lucid Spark. Now, Lucid Spark is an online collaboration tool, much like Jamboard, and functions somewhat like Cami, but it has a few more powerful tools. So you're going to click the link that shows up in the box next to you. I'm going to click this link. Now for you, it may ask you to log in, and go ahead and log in with your Google account. We have licenses purchased for everyone in Marysville. So if you just make sure it's with your Google at Marysville.K12 account, it should let you in just fine. It just may ask you some quick sign up questions. So make sure you do that. Now, when you arrive, this may look very similar to Jamboard. And you have one job, and that is to add a colored sticky note. How do you think a mud pot could move? Again, it's just a hypothesis, but notice I do have other items here. I have images I could add, I can draw, I can add boxes, but we just need a sticky note for today. So you're going to click sticky note, pick a color, and I could say maybe the tectonic plates moving has something to do with it. Notice I don't have to put my name on it. That wasn't asked as part of the question. And again, often that can be helpful for students. You can pick it up. Just make sure that you'll see the double arrow. So pick up and move. And then you can also resize as needed. So come onto this board. If there's already sticky notes here, you can zoom in and zoom out with your buttons down here at the bottom. So there's plenty of room. This goes on forever in infinity in all directions. It's not like a Jamboard that's just a page. So feel free to put a sticky note and then come on back here and I'll show you some of the things that it can do with student information. All right. Now, hopefully your sticky note appeared on the page and you could see that would be pretty easy for students. I'm going to come in here to these 3 lines and come down to something called revision history. Now, this is a way for you to get back to a board that is from a long time ago, or if you want to do something else with information, sort it in a new way, you also could do this. But I had a bunch of people in my training before, so there will be lots of sticky notes on one of our older versions. So when I click version history, notice it's going to think for just a minute. Thinking, thinking, thinking. All right. And I'm going to click this little button here. It shows every time somebody added something, so that's kind of nice. You can see. But I have one with sticky notes already in it for us to look at as part of our work. Oops. Let me go ahead and click on that. My screen's a little tired today, and I'll restore it. And restoring it just means I'm looking at that current version. So you notice that if this was like a Jamboard and there's sticky notes everywhere, that isn't necessarily super helpful. So one thing that you as a teacher can do as students are adding their answers is you can click on any answer and then there are some things you could do. So of course you could give them a little reaction, but I actually like these tags. So a tag allows you to potentially kind of predetermine a category that you think the student's answer falls into. So this blue one said, mud pots move because of water moving underground. Okay, well that seems like that has something to do with maybe the earth changing. So I can click on that And now that tag is associated with this answer. Okay, so there's a pink one here. I can do the same thing. I think maybe they are alive and move with mud magic. So that has its own category, right? So notice that it could be earth changing. I would maybe classify that as other right in here. Now you as the teacher can make tags. So before you started class, I actually made a couple of these by where it says create a tag. I just typed in a name. So maybe we'll add one that says magical. Okay. And then now that becomes something for all people as I tag. Now, for younger students, I wouldn't necessarily show them the tag feature. I would just be doing it as they're adding it. For older students, you could have them classify their own idea into a different area. So the mud is alive. Again, I could classify that as maybe magical. Now, why would I do that? Well, here's why I would do that. Under your 3 dots, that's your more. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see something that says organize, and it has a little picture of sticky notes. So as a teacher, it would take me a long time to talk about all these in class and sort out who was saying what. But if I say organize, and then I say sort, I have different ways to sort it. So I can sort it by color. So if you had had students add a certain color to their thinking, you could have said, well, pink tags go somewhere. But I showed you the tag feature. So I'm just going to show you how that works. You just hit one click, and it takes all the sticky notes that had a tag, and then it puts them into a category for you. Okay, so let's see if I can move this out of the way. So any that were tagged with plates moving, it tagged them here. If a tag had more than one, so bubbles move them, had 3 tags, it actually copy and paste them into 3 different categories. So this tagging feature is really great because I can easily see that maybe 2 students thought this was magical. A couple have some other ideas. A lot of students think it has something to do with plates moving. So that's where I can see my conceptions, and then we can have a discussion based on this chart. So that's really amazing. And just remember that's under this sort feature. Sometimes it's under the 3 dots. And I can sort by tag. I could also sort by sticky note. There is a voting feature you can play around with once students get good at this. So you can come in here and start a new voting session and have students vote on their favorite answer. And then it will sort sticky notes by number of votes. So again, I think Lucid Spark is a great way to get kids in here interacting because it has a few more features that doesn't make it any harder for students, but you as a teacher have a little bit more control. So what I'd like you to do now is in the left corner of your screen. If you click on that, it will take you back to the Lucid homepage. Okay, now this is where all of your different Lucid products will be saved. We actually have 3 products. Lucid Press is like desktop publishing, so kind of like Canva, where you would be creating products like brochures. Lucid Chart will be gone on over in a different training. This is where we can have kind of like brainstorming, so boxes and tables and charts. Lucid Spark is really just whiteboarding. So if you'd like to play around with a blank board, you can go to Lucid Spark and say blank board. You might also want to look around some of these templates that are already here that have kind of been done for you that you may use. So maybe you don't have to create everything. So that might be kind of fun. So take a moment, play around in here, and then come on back and we'll talk a little bit more about the share features in Lucid Spark. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to play around a little bit in Lucid Spark itself, but let me just show you a couple last tips and tools if you decide you might want to use this. So first things first, to share, it's super easy. I just click this little purple share button. If I'm working with adults or even students, I could email them and they'll get a link to join. I can also just click this link button, but you want to make sure the shareable link is turned on and it says anyone at Marysville School District. And then it will auto-register your students and bring them right here to the board. So it's just that easy. This link can be shared in Google Classroom. It can be shared in Canvas. It can also be shared as an active link in Clever. So either our younger students can just click a button and come into this board. So that is great. Now, the other thing you can do, which I sometimes do when I'm working with students, is I turn on this collaborators colors and a color legend so that as people are collaborating, their color when they're adding things to the board. I'm seeing them and I'm seeing their names associated with it. So I know who is collaborating at any given time. So that's kind of a fun feature you could play around with. Other things here is that if you ever want to save some sort of this brainstorming, you can save it as a PDF or a PNG. So you just hit export and then choose those two things. That'll glue everything together and make it so it's not movable anymore, but you have it for later if you want to use it for some sort of resource. If I come down here to revision history, that's again how I got back in time. If there was ever a mistake or I wanted to go see what it looked like a week ago, that's another way to do it. Now convert to template. Let's say I like what I started. Maybe I added some of these boxes here and students were came in and then they were inside the box. So they were adding things here, maybe sticky notes, maybe words. And I really liked my layout. If you don't want to create things over and over again, you can just say convert to template. It'll take everything you have here and add it to the template. So every time I open it, I would start with at that point. So you can imagine maybe like a KWL chart, maybe some sort of brainstorming where you had different pros and cons, even some sort of comparison contrast chart that you're really happy with. You could do that there. So just know that you can create your own and then make them. So sky's the limit. You have a lot more features in here than you do in some of our others. And I think that the tools are just as easy for students to come in and join. Now there is one other thing I want to show you that Lucid Spark can do. Again, this might be down the road a little bit, but you can have breakout boards, which is kind of like a Zoom breakout room where students go and collaborate, and then you can pull their thoughts together back on the main board. So let's take a moment to look at that, then we'll finish up. Oop. Let's try that again.
Have you ever been in a crowded room where there is too much going on and you can't quite get the information you need or capture everyone's thoughts? Breakout boards in Lucid Spark is your solution to gathering rich information without leaving any ideas out. Imagine that you and your team are in the process of brainstorming your next team building activity. Because you have a larger team and want to make sure that you get everyone's thoughts, you realize that it would be a great opportunity to utilize breakout boards. Let's start by creating a breakout board. Click Breakout Boards, and then click Add New Breakout to begin creating your boards. You'll be able to join the breakout board, rename the board, duplicate a board, insert board ideas to the main page, and delete the board if needed. You'll also be able to manage the participant's experience by selecting the Start Breakout and Callback options. Now that your breakout boards have been created, it is time to get your team brainstorming. You can begin the breakout board session by clicking Start Breakout. For your team to join the breakout boards, they will have to select the board they need to join and then click the Join button in the breakout board window view. Once you've started the breakout session, you will see what members of the team are actively working within their board when the signed icons appear. Once the groups are done brainstorming, you can bring them back to the main page by clicking Call Back. When you have everyone back on the main page, you can then go over everybody's ideas. Pro tip: drag and drop breakout boards onto the main page to show the team what everyone came up with during their breakout sessions and vote on the best ideas. From here, your team can use Lucid Spark to make the decision about what the team will do for the next team building activity. Breakout boards in Lucid Spark will help take your team's brainstorming sessions to new heights by driving engagement and capturing new ideas. Breakout boards will allow your team to uncover different perspectives and manage the flow of ideas with ease.
Love that video. Love that idea. Something to think about. I love that you can pull a breakout board back onto the main space and then kind of compare to what everyone came up with. Lucid Spark has lots of great trainings on their YouTube channel, so you may want to check that out as well if you're interested in seeing that. So after seeing these tools in actions, what are your wonderings? How could you implement these in your classroom? I'd love it if you could share your thoughts in the chat or dialogue box, and then go ahead and hit submit, and that will get us to kind of our final thoughts and then all your attendance needs. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you got something out of one of these 3 tools and maybe could see a way to implement this to increase participation in your class. Make sure you fill out the online forms provided in the box. They'll show up in just a minute. The attendance form is extra important. That is how we track your clock hours for HR. And then we'd love the evaluation form filled out for the self-paced course, letting us know how we can improve in the future. Also, don't forget our 2022 PD calendar is still available online. And then there are, of course, some self-paced learning if you need additional training. So have a great day and thanks for joining us.